All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. That took longer to read than I would have liked, but can't do anything about that. We are the. Sorry about that. That's a little bit. Thought I had that slightly better lined up. Sorry. There we go. There's a giant dialogue box in the middle of the screen when I'm getting ready, so I can't always get that lined up. But this is the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. I'm Robert Winfrey, per usual, and I am your host. So, what do we got today? Well, UFC 326 was last night, and oh boy, we got some stuff to hash out about that one, don't we? Oh yeah, that's a thing. We also have to look ahead. UFC Fight Night, what, 269. There it is. Will be this coming Saturday. We're back in the warehouse. Emmett Vachejos is not a bad fight, at least. So we'll preview that. And then we got news. The UFC announced the White House card. They're calling UFC Freedom 250. Boy. We will be talking about other stuff. Again, there's some stuff from around the combat sports world that kind of got talked about. So we'll talk about a lot of that. And that's what we got. So anything, of course, you can do to interact with the product is appreciated. Like, comment, subscribe, comment. I mentioned comments. Y'all know the drill. If you're coming around live, like the stream. If it's after the fact, like the video. Again, y'all know how that works. And yeah, I think that's it for. Let me swap that. Okay, there we go. Sorry, that's a thing that should have done a second ago. All right, let's jump into this, shall we? UFC 326 came our way, and oof, um, not a good night of fights. Not a very good night of fights. Let's just start there. We had minimize that for the moment. We had 4 finishes all night. That's always rough. This became one of those get a finish, get a bonus kind of things, and not in the usual, 20. They've got the usual 25K finish bonus, but everyone who got a finish got a performance of the night bonus. Okay, let's see. Again, anyone coming in, feel free to interact. I will interact with you guys as much as I can. We have Nico Bellic. Sorry if I'm going to say that wrong. DC versus Brock Lesnar at the White House needs to happen. DC did lose a little bit of weight over the last little bit. That strikes me as very, very unlikely, but would be a weird callback. We're more likely to see DC decide to moonlight as a pro wrestler again and have some interaction with Brock there than Brock in his current Hulk form and all the attendant chemicals that go with it make his way to the UFC. So let's go over the predictions. How did we do? We did okay. 9-3. We did lose one fight on weigh-in day. We lost Gaston Bolaños and Jeong-Young Lee. Lee had some pretty serious medical issue related to his weight cut, apparently. Bolaños weighed in, Lee didn't, so that got scrapped. Hopefully he's okay. Hopefully Bolaños got paid. Y'all know how I feel about that. Okay, what did we get right that I was happy about? Switching to Dober, that line movement was crazy. Like straight up, that's why I did it. Initially, I kind of leaned towards Michael Johnson. I wound up going with Drew Dober. Man, when a line moves that much over the course of, 18 hours, somebody knows something. So that was a big part of why I shifted my pick there. Let's see. I feel terrible about getting the Garbrandt call right because he shouldn't have won that fight. I think I missed predicting the Dante Johnson and Cody Brundage fight last time. If I said something, I didn't put it on my spreadsheet, which is my bad. I went with Johnson. Okay, what did I get wrong? The two early ones, because I went with Luke Fernandez over Rodolfo Bellato, and Bellato got a win, which, whatever. And I picked Rafael Tobias, apparently is how that's pronounced, over DR Ngojai, because Ngojai is not good, as evidenced by him being taken down and mounted easily and almost getting hit with a Suluev stretch in the last 5 seconds of the fight. I thought Tobias would not be that stupid to just go, okay, I'll kickbox with this guy for, 14 of 15 minutes of fighting, because that's it's a losing proposition. He's not good on the ground, guys. His takedown defense, he seems to have worked on a little bit, but once he actually gets there, his actual grappling is just not good. And for some reason, they found one guy who was just like, yeah, sure, I'll go along with that. What else? So I got those two wrong. I got the main event wrong. I'll live with it. My only regret about the main event, the fight between Oliveira and Mateusz Gamrot should have been a much bigger indicator of what was going to happen here than I think a lot of us gave it credit for. I still would have picked Max. Let me be very clear. This is not me saying if I just rewatched that in time, I would have got it right. No, I think I still would have got it wrong. But it would have. I should have given that more weight. It's the only way I can say that. Everything else kind of went as planned. Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the individual fights, but 9-3 brings me to 59-17 on the year. So we're still around the place I want to be. And I'd like, for those of you who may not have heard, I'd like to get to 400 correct predictions this year. I was pretty close last year. So we're going to see how this year goes. But as for the fights themselves, main event, you got to get into this one. Charles Oliveira defeats Max Holloway for the utterly pointless BMF title. Unanimous decision, 50-45 across the boards. There was no even remotely close chance of this going the other way. And let me talk about the reaction to this fight is more interesting than the fight itself to me. There's a little bit interesting about the fight, but let me talk about the fallout. A lot of people were very, very unhappy with this fight. There's plenty of reasons to be unhappy with it. Let me be clear. This was interesting to me for about 10 minutes. After the end of the second round, it became abundantly clear what was going to happen, the only way this was going to go. And I stopped. I checked out for the last 15, pretty much. With minimal exception. It was just it was just Charles Oliveira. Let me give. Okay, you know what? Let me do the fight first, then I'll talk about the fallout, because I have to talk about how the fight went to get to the fallout. So a few things. Max Holloway took a couple of really gnarly calf kicks early, which changed his stance and led to him getting a little bit. It was a little bit easier to get a hold of him if you're Oliveira. When he was a bit lower in his stance, Oliveira could not have clinched him as readily as he did, so he leg kicked him to get Max a little bit more upright to deal with the kicks, which he did. But that does mean that it's a little bit easier for Oliveira to get close enough to grab you. And that wound up being kind of the death sentence for him. On the feet, just in the boxing, Max had an edge, not a tremendous one, but a little bit. He just couldn't kick with Charles with Oliveira, because anytime he kicked with him, Oliveira would use that to either catch and close distance or just charge at him after the kick, pretty much. I mean, there was a couple of oblique kicks in the first couple of rounds that Max didn't get punished for, but anything after that, you threw a kick, and during that time period, when you're on one leg and immobile, Oliveira goes, yeah, and gets close enough to him. And once he got close, Max's takedown defense in general is very good. He's benefited from being a big featherweight for a while. And he hasn't fought a lot of guys at lightweight who were really committed to taking him down. To say nothing of how very, very good Charles Oliveira is at clinch takedowns. Oliveira doesn't have a good double leg. Doesn't have a good single leg. But if he gets his hands together, he's got a lot of trips. He's got a lot of off balance. He's got a lot of little stuff that he can do to get you down. And he does have a degree of physicality where once his hands get together, even if you've got one arm trap, in fact, I think he prefers it that way. One underhook on this side, the other one goes over the arm, hands come together, lift, and down you go. He's gotten really, really good at that. Again, he did it to Max here a lot. He did it to Jim Miller. He did it to Gamrot. Like, he's done it to a lot of guys. Riley Turner. Who do I reckon Max should fight next? Excuse me. Hooker would be good fun. I think the problem is Hooker's a bit too far down in the ranking. Oh, sorry, for Max. I don't know why I transposed that. Yeah, Max and Hooker would be. Who's going to complain about that? Dude, Dan Hooker, we don't talk about him enough as one of the war horses. We talk about like Poirier and Chandler and Gagey, and with good reason. But Hooker deserves to be in that conversation. Yeah, I'm not going to complain one bit about Max Holloway and Dan Hooker. I think if there's a problem with it, it's that Hooker's a little bit further down in the rankings, and it's a little bit uncompetitive on paper. In practice, who knows? But you could easily main event a show in Oceania with that. If you want to do a smaller like fight night in Auckland or something similar, dude, Max Holloway and Dan Hooker, yeah, sign me up. That's a perfectly valid fight for him next. They're probably going to try and keep him away from another grappler, so he's probably not going to fight someone like Mateusz Gamrot or Arman Tsarukyan if you're Max. But yeah, another kind of action hero, Hooker, Fiziev, BSD maybe, somebody like that is definitely, I think, on the table. So Oliveira, yeah, and once they hit the mat, Oliveira's a much better grappler. Max got his jiu-jitsu black belt after this because he survived. And let's be very clear, Oliveira was credited with like 21 minutes of control time, a little less. It was like 20:49. The number of people who have survived for that long with Charles Oliveira holding control positions on them is very, 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 very small. It's an impressive level of jiu-jitsu defense that he displayed. So good on Max for that, but I think his size hurt him a little bit here. Max doesn't have a ton of power. He's got good power. He had good power at featherweight. I think he's got okay power at lightweight because he hit Oliveira, fairly cleanly a few times, but Oliveira just kind of kept going, and Max never really planted his feet to throw. He was trying to stay mobile, and that reduced some of the danger that was going towards Oliveira, and you've got to put Oliveira in danger because otherwise he's just going to come into you. He's just going to push into you like that and just, oh, you want to be out there? Nope. I'm going to stand out here as long as it takes until I can close distance. So a lot of good stuff there. I think one of the problems, Jack Slack talked about this. I'm going to reiterate some of it. Having the back in modern MMA is a real double-edged sword. It's a dominant position, but you've also got like no offense. There's a couple of exceptions. But if you're on the back and you have the other guy face down, like flattened out, then you got something. You can actually like mount offense from there. But if we're both on a hip, or if you have someone's back and they've got you to where you're both seated or leaning back and your back's on the one on the mat and then you have their back, you can't strike from there. They're very, very limited. And getting a rear naked choke these days is incredibly difficult if you're just playing jiu-jitsu. Most rear naked chokes these days, not all, but most, tend to stem from hurting someone beforehand and having them give up position, then you grab the choke. The number of people who can just, hand fight and swim to get the choke in, especially when you got, gloves that are making everything more difficult, like it's a rarity. So again, it's a weird position because you want to get there, but your offense just becomes a little bit muted. How would a rematch between Oliveira and Saryukian go? If it's 3 rounds, I don't think it much changes. If it's 5 rounds, it has to be 5 rounds for me to be all that interested in it at this point. I would still favor Saryukian just slightly. Here's the problem with one of the problems with Charles Oliveira's game. This is a small problem, but he will be accepting of being on his back because he tries to use offense quickly to initiate scrambles to then wind up on top because his transition game's good. He can't actually out-scramble Arman Saryukian, so anytime he winds up on bottom, if he can't actually catch the submission on the way down, like a guillotine choke or a triangle or an armbar or whatever, he's just going to get held down and kind of elbowed out because Saryukian's one of the only guys in the UFC who does meaningful ground and pound. Over 5 rounds, again, I would still favor Arman just a little bit. But I could be okay with that rematch at some point. This is my other big problem with the way this fight went. It's a good win for Oliveira, but I didn't see much here that made me think a fight between him and Ilia Topuria goes differently. I don't know, maybe you guys feel otherwise, but part of the reason he got in on Max Holloway was his hand position, the fact that he could be baited into kicking at inopportune times, and then a real lack of like down blocking and framing. There's some stuff in the clinch that he didn't do very well in this fight that Ilia Topuria did really, really well when he fought Oliveira. Go rewatch Oliveira and Topuria. Oliveira gets to the clinch and gets things to the fence. Like you can see him get almost the same position on Ilia that he got on Max. Look at how Topuria handled it versus how Max handled it. That's beating Charles Oliveira is not an easy thing, but I think there are certain people who just once you have that guy's number, you kind of have it. Charles Oliveira could fight like Islam Makhachev 100 times. He might lose all 100 of them. He could fight Ilia Topuria 100 times. He's losing 90 of those. Just because of the style that is brought by those guys. Topuria's okay dealing with him in the clinch, smart enough on the ground to avoid being tangled up, can get a little bit of damage off there. And then on the feet has just the best delivery system for serious power. And, Islam Makhachev just does everything that Oliveira does better. He's a better clinch fighter. He's a better kicker. He's a better ground and pound artist. He doesn't do a lot of it, but he's better at it. Like Makhachev's just better than Oliveira at everything Oliveira's good at. So we come out of this and thank you very much, Riley. The whole thing will be available on this particular YouTube channel. So check back after I'm done. It's going to be a while. I've got a lot of stuff to cover, but happy to have you around. Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it. Hope to see you again in the future. I'm going to wind up accidentally cultivating an audience in New Zealand and Australia because I record these at like midnight or 1 a.m. my time, which is Mountain Standard daylight time now, but Mountain time. So there were a couple of things that Oliveira did here that, again, they're really good. His clinch wrestling is really good. He's become very good at it. So good on him. He got a win. The problem with this fight is largely marketing. And because it kind of goes as follows. A lot of people have talked about this. If you had told me we're having a rematch between Charles Oliveira and Max Holloway, and it's going to be 5 rounds, it's going to be the main event, I'd be okay with that. Yay. If it goes the way that this fight went, okay. Yay. This is how these fights go on occasion. There's a lot good to talk about what Oliveira did. His control is very good. Again, his clinch wrestling has improved. He's got very good body locks works. He got to show that off. There's a lot good to talk about. But when you attach something as so the BMF belt was always stupid. It was an acceptable level of stupid when we had one fight that was going to be Masvidal and Diaz, and like, okay, you got two, kind of throwback, well-rounded but fundamentally brawling fighters. Let them go at it; it'll be fun. And okay, it should have died there. It should have just been dead. We should have had the one-off and let it alone. But the UFC realized, oh, we have events that we want to put on. And if we have this BS title, we can pretend that it's a real title fight and things will go on from there. So they resurrected it. And in fairness, if you're going to resurrect it, Gaethje and Poirier 2 is a good fight to attach that to. But the fact that you got 3 fights that more or less fell within the theoretical ethos of what this is supposed to represent is a minor miracle. Because you had Masvidal Diaz, which fine. Then you had Poirier Gaethje, which was good. It was shorter than their first fight, but good fight. Then you had Gaethje and Holloway, and that was, fun as heck, and one of the most iconic endings to a fight in UFC history. We should have been done. But no, we're going to try and keep it in rotation, whatever that means. I mean, we know what it means. It's a marketing ploy. But that's the problem, is that when you market something like this, and then the fight you get is a GSP-style smothering, and I say that as a big fan of GSP, with immense respect for his skill set and career, but that's a closer analog to what took place here than anything related to any other Max Holloway fight. And the marketing and the salesmanship on this matters. There's not really another way to get around that. You sold this as one thing, and you didn't deliver the thing that you sold, that you were trying to sell people on. It's like the business of movie trailers. Oh, look at this movie. It looks like X. Okay, I'll go see it. Well, it's actually Y. What are we doing here? It's a fine example of Y as a movie, genre maybe, but it's not what I was sold. I was sold Roofman is a decent recent example of this. I was sold a kind of quirky comedy about criminal living in Toys R Us and connecting with somebody and a little bit of hijinks and funniness. And in reality, it's a much more just like strict drama about kind of an unrepentant criminal whose belief that because he's largely non-violent, that we're okay. And you're not giving me what you sold me. You made promises when you sold me this. When you sell a fight under a specific ethos, that's what people want. Now, because there's no actual rule set or anything to go along with this other than the arbitrary acronym, it's an initialization, not an acronym, that the UFC wanted to throw on this thing, it's just a fight. It's just a generic MMA fight. That's all it functionally is. But when you attach branding and marketing to it, the consumer is going to get annoyed when they don't get what was advertised. This is not complicated. And that's why people are upset. If this had just been Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira 2 in the main event, no one would be complaining as loudly as they are. There'd still be some people complaining about the fight not being very exciting. It's a fair complaint. And as a capstone to a not very good night of fights, that certainly makes it even worse in some respects. But when you decide that your branding and your marketing around this is going to lean into something that you do not deliver and cannot guarantee that you deliver, you shouldn't be surprised when people are upset at you. Now, the UFC doesn't care, because of course they don't. And you know what? I'm going to steal from other people who have said this. This is not unique to me. Guys, one championship has 4-ounce Muay Thai. It's kind of awesome. I saw some people do the, man, dirty boxing is what people want out of BMF fights. Like, no, we kind of want clinching, kneeing, and kicking as well, and dirty boxing doesn't allow that. Little clinching. But like 4-ounce Muay Thai is kind of what you're talking about here with this. It's Muay Thai kickboxing in 4-ounce gloves. So MMA gloves instead of boxing gloves. And again, one championship does this. It's awesome. It's maybe the best thing they do. The UFC could do this. There is nothing that says the UFC can't have on any of its cards 4-ounce Muay Thai fights in the octagon. That can happen. They won't because they're allergic to all things cool. Dana White's averse to it, I guess. But if you wanted to create the BMF division, do 4-ounce Muay Thai rules and have it be a separate thing. Of course, then you'd have to bring over kickboxers, and you might try to get guys trying to float. But like, if that's the amount of modern MMA that is just kickboxing anyway, like, throw 4-ounce Muay Thai on there. Why not? Because we promote MMA. No one cares. You think Paramount cares? If you want to throw 4-ounce Muay Thai fights onto a UFC card, they're not going to care. UFC's just stuck in the mud. So if you want to do something like that, do that. But the whole BMF belt, we don't need to throw it in a trash can. But never book this again. It should have been just a stupid one-off novelty that should have never been replicated. You tried it. You got lucky once. You got lucky 1.5 times. Call it 1.5. And this time it blew up in your face. Leave it alone. Never book it again. Let it die. Just leave it alone. Nobody wants more of this. And none of that is to say Charles Oliveira is not a good fighter. He's a very, very, very good fighter. He's a former champion, got a stupidly long career. He's at the top of a bunch of lists of records, and I'm not going to say anything bad about him. He fought to win. He wants to fight for the real belt. He's got to make a case for that. And this is what he had to do it. That's it. And the fact that Max Holloway's defense was good enough to extend this 25 minutes is to be commended as well. So, yeah, that's where we are. People just aren't happy about it. They were delivered not the same product that they were sold. And it capped off a night of bad fights. I mean, in some cases, really bad. So that's just where we are. Max has already mentioned, someone like Benoit Saint-Denis or Dan Hooker. Oliveira's got to wait. We're going to have to see what happens with a few things. We're going to have to see if Arman Tsarukyan can get out of the doghouse. Spoiler alert, I don't think he can. We're going to have to see what happens between Topuria and Gaethje. We're going to have to see if they try to remake. You know what? I'm going to save some of that for when we talk about the White House card. Suffice to say, there's a lot that Oliveira's got to wait and see how the chips fall. He did about as much as he could do to make his case here, but there's a lot of stuff that's out of his control to see what happens next with the title picture. We should go fairly quickly through the rest of these. Co-main event, Caio Borralho defeated Reinier de Ridder via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. I actually gave de Ridder the second. Not a very good fight. De Ridder just slow, which is not the end of the world, but you got to learn how to fight around it. Just never got his game going in any sort of like real capacity. I don't know if he might not want to try out 205. Because he's fought there before. He actually fought at 225 was the upper limit for that weight class and won, but 205 is doable for him. I don't know that, again, I don't know if his fortunes would be all that better there, but I know light heavyweight is a much worse division than middleweight, so might be worth a thought. Borralho called out Dricus du Plessis. He's been banging that drum for a while at this point. I'm kind of on board for that fight now. For a while, that was him trying to say, let me fight for the belt. He actually did call for that fight, I think, before DDP won the belt, but certainly afterwards. And at this point, yeah, DDP finally like broke his silence. He got interviewed and talked about the Khamzat Chimaev fight a little bit. I could go for DDP and Bahalio. That's not terrible. Next up, this fight sucked. Raul Rosas Jr. defeated Rob Font via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. Rosas just did the Umar and Marab, make sure nothing happens. Lot of quick work, and I actually did not give him the I think it was the first round. I thought he lost too many exchanges and did nothing with his control. Rounds 2 and 3 were clearly his, but he had a couple of good scrambles because Rob Font on bottom is a little bit tricky, and Rosas kind of just out scrambled him, but he had like north of 10 minutes of control time and fewer significant strikes than minutes of control time. That's bad. Again, ground and pound is a dead art almost in MMA. And I wish it wasn't. I would love to see it come back. Guys who actually know how to do damage from the top, but we are where we are with it, and Rosas just doesn't have that at this point in time. I forget who he said, yeah, I'm coming for the belt. My thought is just give him have Marab fight Rosas at this point. It would amuse me if nothing else. It's probably going to be somebody more like Sandhagen, given something else that's going on, but that's a whole other thing. So yeah, Rosas got a win, but I don't know. He doesn't need to be on a main card again for a while. Lightweight Drew Dober knocked out Michael Johnson, 153 of the second. Decent first round, back and forth. A lot of interesting work around the inside leg kick as both guys are southpaws. And Dober's not used to throwing that, so he kind of got chinned a few times trying to throw the step up inside low kick. Johnson still has fast hands, but Johnson's defense has always been a little iffy. To say nothing of all the line movement and this comes from, X, so take this with a giant grain of salt. But I saw the thing floating around about, Michael Johnson got paid to take a TKO loss in the second, and some group is like holding a family member as a hostage to ensure he goes through with it. Which, don't get me wrong, I find shockingly plausible, if we're being honest. Legalized sports betting to this extent, I think is just a mistake, but we'll get more to that some other time for that discussion. Gregory Rodriguez defeated Bruno Ferreira via knockout, 147 to the second round. Their first fight, a lot of forward pressure from Rodriguez, good old RoboCop. And Ferreira did a lot of switching while backing up, and he just kind of walked Rodriguez into a bad exchange in their first fight. This fight, he lets Ferreira try to come forward, and for some reason, Ferreira is not as comfortable with that. And Ferreira is out there switching stance in space. Now, as a guy who doesn't mind switching stances, I'm a little bit bistantial. You've got to do it either in the middle of combination or when you're far enough out of range to not have to deal with any immediate repercussions while you kind of reset your mind, because defense is different and offense is different and a whole bunch of other stuff. If you switch in punching range or very close to it, the other guy should attack you right away. This has started because stance switching became a big thing in MMA for a while and still is to a certain degree. People started figuring out, attack when they switch. Very good fighters have been caught by this. If you look at the Topuria and Max Holloway fight, the tide turner there, Max switches, Topuria cracks him with a right hand basically on the switch. And that sets up the whole finishing sequence. Israel Adesanya against Nasruddin Imavov. Izzy switches, a little bit too close, immediately attacked by Imavov, and that leads to the finish. Here, Ferreira switches in space out to southpaw at a really awkward bit of time and distance, and Rodriguez steps a little bit to his right, not to try and take inside foot position, but actually to pivot and get perpendicular. Because if they were like here and here, then Ferreira does this and Rodriguez steps here. And he's still in stance, right hand. Sorry, that's not the best visualization tool. But he steps perpendicular because you want, if the other guy's flat towards you, you're not flat to them, you've got options and they don't. Crushes him with a right hand. I think it was only the second strike he landed, knocked him out. Good win for Rodriguez. I got a soft spot for RoboCop, so good on him. And that was your main card. On the prelims, oh god, this fight. Cody Garbrandt defeated Xiaolong via unanimous decision 28-27. Now you might say 28-27. What the heck happened there? Well, I'll tell you. Xiaolong was deducted 2 points in the third round for groin strikes. This fight was weird. First of all, Cody Garbrandt should have lost this fight. 2 judges gave him the first round, which I don't agree with. If I squint real hard, I can maybe see it, but he got rattled with a head kick early. The argument might be that he kind of got it back with an elbow out of the clinch, but I just don't think he landed enough in the first round to overcome. I just don't think he landed enough in the first round. Second round, he does even less. And the second round is where things start to get a little chippy. There is a low blow to Garbrandt. He took a ton of inside leg kicks, the vast majority of which were clean. But in this case, Xiao starts throwing one, and Garbrandt level changes and steps forward. Now, if you want to get kicked in the groin, lower your level and move forward when someone's throwing an inside leg kick. That will do it to you in a hurry. So clearly, purely an accident. One of those that I would not want to see a point taken if we were operating under strict liability. Garbrandt recovers, Xiao apologizes, we move on. We got 2 people who have liked the stream so far. Thank you guys very much. Then later in the second, near the end of it, there's a headbutt from Garbrandt to Xiao. Garbrandt is changing levels, trying to shoot a double leg. Xiao is changing levels, trying to defend, and just bam, headbutt from Garbrandt. I don't think this was an intentional headbutt. I do think he led with his head, which is a little bit reckless. And then the third round is where things go off the rails. So there's a right kick. Now, the previous groin shot was Garbrandt will switch stances. He was mostly orthodox here, but the problem for him came when he switched southpaw in the third. I'll explain why in a second. He took a bunch of inside leg kicks, and it was kind of messing with his leg at a certain point. So in the third round, he goes southpaw. Now, the first groin strike was not a big deal. It was completely accidental. It wasn't a very hard one. Garbrandt took like 20 seconds to shake it off. It was not, again, it was the kind of thing that happens. You don't want it to happen, but In this third round, he takes a couple of more inside leg kicks and decides my leg's in trouble. I'm not throwing a whole lot because he was not doing much of anything. Let me go southpaw, protect my leg, try to get another look. Xiaolong then does one of the things you're supposed to do when your opponent switches on you and we're now open stance. He fires a power body kick. Not a bad idea. This guy's at his right leg, and he's throwing it right to the low abdomen, which is one of the places you want to kick. Garbrandt is circling, and there's a little bit of the timing is weird, and he gets circled, and Xiaolong winds up kicking him pretty badly in the groin. There is no argument about whether or not this was a groin strike. It definitely hit there. It was definitely a bad one. Garbrandt, during the timeout, vomits into a bucket. And the referee takes a point from Xiaolong, which is entirely appropriate. I mean, you had to at that point. And normally, again, this is not good. It takes Garbrandt, I think, about 2 minutes to recompose himself, and then we're back to fighting. And then Garbrandt does the pissed at you, so do the charging knee, which doesn't land. We get a little bit of an exchange. They clinch, and they're trading knees in the clinch, and one of Xiao's goes into the groin. So this is again not a bad one. But it's another groin strike. Sal saying he needs to rewind this to watch from the beginning. By all means, sir. Yeah, I sorry, I can't keep going. If you happen to come in late and you do have questions about stuff that I've already talked about, or you think I've already talked about, I'm just going down the card in order. Feel free to ask. I'll try to recapitulate my point for you without going too deep into it. Or just rewind and watch from the beginning. That's fine with how this works. You don't have to watch live because YouTube is good like that. But after that second groin strike in the third round, the ref takes another point from Xiaolong. A 2-point deduction in a 3-round fight is not good. But again, Cody recovers fairly quickly, but then he spends the last like 2.5 minutes of this fight not fighting. Because now, as long as he hasn't lost every round, he's going to win the fight. I thought he lost every round, but that's me. Yeah, this fight it went off the rails in that third round. Herb Dean did everything he could to keep control of the situation. There was a little bit of a discussion about whether or not the fight should have been stopped when Garbrandt started vomiting. Based on what people have said, mostly like Josh Barnett and John McCarthy and other guys like that, if you have an instance where a fighter vomits during a timeout, it's not an immediate stoppage. Normally, the rules say that involuntary loss of bodily functions, which is mostly like vomiting, urination, or defecation, means the fight is just done. Now, I imagine if it was urination, even during a break, they'd probably stop it, but I don't know. That's just a guess on my part, but apparently if it happens during a timeout, it's not automatic the way it is if you get kicked real hard in like the stomach and then you puke. At that point, fight's over. So there was just a lot going on there. Garbrandt got a win that I don't think he deserved. Ben Cartledge, who is normally a pretty good judge, giving Cody Garbrandt the third round and consequently a 10-7, I find giving Garbrandt the third borderline unconscionable. I don't know how you could look at that third round, just that 5-minute segment, and say Cody Garbrandt won that 5-minute segment of fighting. If you want to argue he won the first, I disagree, really. But we can argue that. I do think if you squint real hard, you can maybe start to make a case. But I thought Xiaolong won every round, so he should have won 28-27 even with the point deductions. But that's just me. Garbrandt looked terrible. I'm never going to pick him again. Well, barring extraordinary circumstances, I'm just done picking that guy. His offense is muted at best. It's uncommitted. He's just not nearly the same guy he used to be. Middleweight Dante Johnson defeated Cody Brundage via split decision, 29-28. That fight sucked. There are like 3 fights from this card that are on my worst fight of 2026 nominee list. We're a fourth of the way through the year. I have like 2 fights on my best of list, fight of the year list. I have many on my worst of possibilities. Featherweight Alberto Montez defeated Ricky Tercios with an anaconda choke. Put him to sleep 40 seconds into the second round. Yeah, real nice anaconda from Montez. Tercios is a weird dude. He's just a weird fighter. Like I don't know what else to kind of say about that. He's got a real like scramble heavy grappling game, but he's also put on some of the worst fights. His fight with Amin Zahabi, like that's just one of the worst fights you'll see. It's terrible. So Montez, yeah, got him to shoot bad. Anaconda choke. Now they were talking a little bit about some of the technique he might use to finish it. That's a little bit different. The big difference in an anaconda finish has to do with where your grip is, because an anaconda finish, like this is my choking arm, then your head and neck is here, and the arm that is trapped is on this side. So I go across your neck, around, and grab this arm. If I can get this figure 4 instead of like up here, so if this is my arm that's trapped, if their figure 4 is here, like this is the connection point right about here, I can just bring this down to fight it. If the connection point, if that this to here is like here, that's really bad because there's almost no leverage to try and fight that. So that's kind of the big one, is getting that the lock point really deep on the other side instead of around here. And he did, man. He got all the way down on the other side of that body. Dude, he put Tercios to sleep in much less than the 8 seconds and you tend to think of that it takes to blood choke somebody. So that was a nice win. Tumen Denbarel, defeated Cody Durden via unanimous decision. 230-27 and a 29-28. This was a weird fight too. I think this was the fight that kind of caused some of the way that the refereeing was done in the Garbrandt and Shao fight. Because, man, the cheating in this fight that went unpenalized. Durden with fence grabs. There was one circumstance in the third round where, Tumer and Denver also at one point did just punch him square in the back of the head. Let's be clear about that. But there's another circumstance in the third round when Durden's got the back and Tumen Dembarel is, tripoded up. He's based up, so he's on his feet, hips up, head down, trying to shake Durden over the top, which is one of the things you can do there. And Durden's just reaching with his feet and grabbing the cage with his toes to stop from being shaken forward. Visibly, clearly, unambiguously. There was a bunch of glove grabbing. There were some strikes thrown after the bell. The first one, the one that was thrown at the end of the second, I'm a little bit more sympathetic to because the ref was a bit slow to get in there. And bear in mind, the referee is the one that ends the round, not the bell. So the ref's got to be really on it. And in that case, I think he didn't think another strike was coming, and one was. So, but just yeah, there was some fun back escapes from both guys. It was an okay little fight if you can kind of look sideways at the flagrant cheating from all parties. A lot of that from DR Nurgozai too. Get to him in just a second. Flyweight, Sumu Darji defeated Jesus Aguilar. Unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. Really, really strong, fundamental, all-around performance from Sumu Darji. Just better everywhere. The only thing missing from this was him getting a finish. He outstruck him at distance. He had some good pocket exchanges, out-wrestled him. Just everything was better for Sumu Darji. So really solid win for him. The aforementioned DR Nurgozai grabbing the fence repeatedly because the ground is lava to him. If he gets taken down, he just has nothing. He defeated Rafael Tobias via unanimous decision, 229-28 and a 30-27. Not a good fight. And kicking everything off, Adolfo Bellato defeated Luke Fernandez via TKO punches, 2:42 of the second. Fernandez had much better striking, much faster hands. Here's the thing. They were splitting a lot of jabs, and neither guy was good about getting their head off the center line. And if your hands are slower, one of the ways you can compensate for this is punching in closer. And once Bellato just tagged Fernandez with a left hook exiting the clinch. If your hands are slower, but the other guy's exiting and reaching, it doesn't matter. Your hand speed is not as much of a factor there. It's just, can you get it to the target and do you have decent power? And apparently he's got okay power and he did get to the target. So tough outing for Fernandez there. But not a good fight either. Just at least a short one. And that was it. Again, not a very good night of fights all around. Really unfortunate. I had moderate hopes for at least a few of these. I already mentioned it at the top of the show, but there was no fight of the night. Yeah, Charles Oliveira after the fight going, yeah, that's a fight of the night, right? No. Performances went to Drew Dober, Gregory Rodriguez, Alberto Montes, and Rodolfo Bellato. Again, if you got a finish, you got a bonus on this card. So that's all of that. I'm going to talk about the White House card after I preview the next event, so stay tuned for that. I should mention this. They announced going into the Hall of Fame into the fight wing, the title fight between Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk from UFC 248. That is a no-brainer. That is by a wide margin the best female fight in MMA history. I still think Joanna won it, but that's another discussion. It is a great fight. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. 1,000,000% deserve to be in that spot. So yeah, my full report is in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. Go give it a read if you'd like. I always appreciate that. Alrighty. Well, that took not as long as I thought. I was worried I was going to take forever on that segment, but let's move on then, shall we? To UFC Fight Night 269. We're back in the warehouse. The warehouse, everybody. We happy to be in the warehouse? I mean, I'm not, but I imagine someone is. Sorry, just 1 second. Let me get my spreadsheet ready for my predictions. Okay. So in the we actually have a good main event. You know, I'm gonna be down on a lot of this card. How much? A lot. Jeez. I'm gonna be down on a lot of this card. The main event's pretty good. Main event is Josh Emmett versus Kevin Vachejos. I need a few of my other websites up. I should have done this earlier. My apologies. Alrighty. Okay. There we go. All right. Because there's some people that don't have Wikipedia entries, and I'm going to need to be able to talk about their records and all that fun stuff. All right. So, main event, Josh Emmett, Kevin Vachejos. I actually quite like this fight. Josh Emmett's been around for a while. Sadly, Josh Emmett's game is at the point where it's just wade forward, overhand right. I wish it was more dynamic, but he's also got some of the most thunderous punching power that division's ever seen. Emmett is 40. Geez, he's 41. Barely 41, but 41 nonetheless. He's been through the ringer in some fights too, man. He's on a rough stretch. He's just 1-5 in his last 4. His last 5. Excuse me, 1-4 in his last 5. I can talk. Now, in fairness to him, a few of these losses are completely understandable. He was beating up Yair Rodriguez for the interim belt in 2023 before he got caught in a triangle choke. Then he got the brakes beaten off him for 5 rounds by Ilia Topuria. That was a rough fight to watch at a certain point. But Yair went on to fight for the belt. Topuria went on to win the belt. Then he knocks Bryce Mitchell so out. One of the scarier knockouts I've seen in the UFC. Then he loses to Lerone Murphy over 5 rounds. And Lerone Murphy is, one of the best guys in the weight class. So we're not in a bad spot here. Like, it's not great to lose those, but if you're going to lose, losing to the champ and a guy who might very well be the champ soon, understandable. Most recently, he lost to Yusuf Zalal via armbar. Now, Yusuf Zalal is not a scrub, but I hope I'm not going to offend him or anyone else by saying that Yusuf Zalal is not at the moment as good as Ilia Topuria or Lerone Murphy. So that's a pretty big indicator. Again, I think the real problem is that Emmett's skill set has become very one-dimensional. He doesn't have a great jab. He's got good wrestling, but uses it very infrequently. It's all about this. It's just about, can I land this? And in fairness to him, that carried him pretty far, but I think he's winding down, and Vachejos is young. He's only 24. Good grief. I may have a couple of shirts older than that guy. Speaking of which, I should probably clean out my closet. Vachejos is 17-1. His only loss was on the Contender Series to Gian Silva. 3-0 in the UFC. Most recently knocked out Giga Chikadze. That was a pretty good win. This is a pretty big step up for him. Like, if you want to have some hesitation around picking him here, the escalation from Giga Chikadze to Josh Emmett is non-trivial. I respect Giga a lot, but Emmett is definitely a level different from him. And if you want to get some pause because of that, that's understandable. I think I'm gonna go with Vachejos. The degradation of Emmett's game is too obvious to be ignored at this point. He's just a bit too one-dimensional. Now, 5 rounds for Vachejos is also a bit of a first timer, but I don't know. I'm not going to be completely shocked if Josh Emmett wins. Let me put it like that. But I have no real reservations picking Vachejos. And the Vachejos pronunciation is because that's how he likes it. He's from Argentina, and that's the way the accent goes. What are the odds on this one? Just out of curiosity. Depending on where we look. Okay. I wouldn't be comfortable with that. Vachejos is like minus 500 to minus 600. Guys, I'm okay picking him, but you're asking me to say that if Josh Emmett lands the nuclear bomb, I'm gonna have to pay out like 4-1. That's I wouldn't be super comfortable with that. All right. If MMA, not sure what you're asking there, my man. Headset guy, sorry. Co-main event is Amanda Lemos and Jillian Robertson. You know what? Bless Jillian Robertson. She's been around a shockingly long time for someone who's only 30 years old. On a 4-fight winning streak. Most recently, TKO'd Marina Rodriguez. Lemos fought for the belt not too long ago. She's 38 though. Yeah, it's been a minute actually. She fought in 2023 and had nothing for Zhang Weili. She beat Mackenzie Dern. She lost to Virna Jandiroba. She beat Yasmin Lucindo. She lost to Tatiana Suarez. Kind of a tough one. This is a well-matched fight. I'm not super interested in it, but I think Robertson has finally really put her skill set together. And I think Lemos might be on the downhill side of things. Odds are a little bit with Robertson. I will respect that. That said, if Robertson can't get Lemos down and has to just strike it out with her, she's probably going to lose. For whatever that's worth. Let's see. Light heavyweight. Oh, God, it's already begun. The degradation. Iwan Kutalaba and Umar Sy. This is the kind of fight Iwan Kutalaba does, in fact, tend to win. Needs to be said. Kutalaba's coming off a split decision loss to Modestas Pekauskas. He'd beaten Ivan Urslan and Ibo Aslan before that. Sy's coming off a loss, isn't he? Well, he's 2-1 in the UFC. He might be coming off a win. 3-1 actually. Excuse me. Yeah, remember? Oh, I forgot the Tokos fight. Right. He's coming off a win over Benjamin Hiberio. He lost to Alonzo Menafield. Now, Kutalaba just kind of settled into being a, not great, but effective roadblock for young guys in the sport that, maybe are not all that great. And I don't know if Sy doesn't fall into that category. The odds are with Umar Sy minus 200. Frankly, I think the value on Kutalaba there might be pretty seriously worth exploring. All right. I'm gonna go with Sy, but I don't feel very good about that one. Featherweight next. Andre Fili. Man, Touchy-Feely's been around forever, it seems like. He is taking on Jose Miguel Delgado. What's Fili been up to lately? Fili Been trading wins and losses since 2022, basically. Jeez. Yeah, if we start with 2022, he lost to Joe Anderson Brito, beat Bill Algeo, lost to Nathaniel Wood, beat Lucas Almeida, lost to Danny Ige, beat Cub Swanson, dubiously, lost to Melquiel Zolcosta. Melky guillotining him was great. Beat Christian Rodriguez via split decision. That was, I think I was okay with him winning that, but the dude has a lot of splits. Delgado, on the other hand, let's have a look at you, sir. 10-2. What are you? 1-1, 2-1 in the UFC. He beat Connor Matthews and Hader Emil. That's fine. Missed weight and lost to Nathaniel Wood in October of last year. That's not so good. I haven't picked Andre Fili in a minute. Do I think he's going to break the pattern here? That's the real question. Because if the pattern holds, he's going to lose. I might just go with the odds on this one. The odds are with Delgado. They're big with Delgado. Once again, man, odds I would not be comfortable holding if I had to pay out. I'll respect the odds. Let me asterisk this one. I got to double check something about Delgado because I don't have a great recollection of his last couple of fights, and I would like to double check a few things there. Featherweight, Marwan Rahiki, and Harry Hardwick. Oh boy. So Rahiki is, I believe that's the New Zealand flag. No, it's Australia. Right. The big star over there is Australia. He's undefeated, 7-0. Geez, getting into the UFC early. That's always iffy. Yeah, he's a Contender Series grad. Of course he is. Let me guess, all finishes. Yep. He's only been out of the second round once. Okay. That's a rough place. There's not a lot known about you at that point. How about old Harry Hardwick? 13-4-1. I think he lost his UFC debut. He did to Kaue Fernandez. Oh yeah, Kaue tore him up with calf kicks. He took that fight on short notice. Hardwick had a real good run through Cage Warriors. Bellator, Cage Warriors? Yeah, Cage Warriors really had a real good run. Fought in Bellator a few times, but he was Cage Warriors champion. Harry Hardwick's actually pretty good. Against a guy who was just kind of a big unknown. I'm tempted to say Hardwick. What are the odds with Rahiki? They're partially there because Hardwick did not look good in his UFC debut. Let's start there. His legs got torn up. All right, I'm gonna asterisk this one as well. I need to look up a couple of Rahiki's fights. Then I'm gonna. So let me asterisk that one, but that'll probably be an okay fight when it's all said and done. Not okay will likely be head heavyweights, Vitor Petrino and Steve Asplund. Vitor Petrino did manage to get a little bit of life back into his UFC career when he moved up to heavyweight because it's a terrible division. He's what, 2-0 since moving up? Yeah, he had the two losses at light heavyweight to Anthony Smith and Dustin Jacoby, then moved up. He fought a couple of guys who shouldn't be in the UFC. He beat Austin Lane and Thomas Peterson. Like, oh, whoop-de-doo. And he's fighting Steve Asplund, who is 7-1. He had an okay UFC debut, 4-fight winning streak. I mean, it was okay. It was like over Sean Saraff, and he's not very good. It's probably Petrino. Right. Yeah, it's Petrino, and I'm not happy about it. I'm rooting for Asplund. Let me just be very, very clear about that, because that would be funnier to me. But That's where that one's going to go. Okay, that is the main card. It's not very good. Main event's fine. Rahiki and Hardwick will probably be fun. Lemos and Robertson at least has divisional relevance. On the prelim, speaking of divisional relevance, Charles Johnson, who holds knockout wins over the current champion and I believe the presumed number one contender now. But one of the number one contenders, because we know Van's fighting Tyra. But Johnson also knocked out Lonnie Kavanaugh, who just beat Brandon Royval. So we have not number one contender, but definitely top guy. Johnson is coming off of a loss, though, against Alex Perez. Yeah, that was tough. That was tough for Johnson, man. He does a lot of hands down stuff, especially if you get him biting on feints around low kicks and body attacks, and that opened up head strikes. Charles Johnson is just he's got a weird record. He's kind of like Michael Johnson in that the best version of him is a really, really tough fight and could probably beat pretty much anyone in that division. Again, the dude knocked out Josh Van and knocked out Lonnie Kavanaugh. That's not an accident. He also got stopped by Alex Perez coming off a layoff and he missed weight and he lost a decision to Cody Durden back in 2023. Like the dude's a little all over the place. Again, his best version is one of the better guys in that weight class. I absolutely believe that. He just can't always bring the best version of himself to the cage. And that's his big struggle. He's fighting Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva coming off a win over Hyun Sung Park. He lost to Manel Kopp and Joshua Van before that. I'm not going to hold too much against him because Manel Kopp is very near the top and Joshua Van is the champion. What else he lost to? He lost to David Dvorak and Tagir Bekov back in 2020. Who's his best win? Tyson Nam, maybe? I mean, when he's on. Like, he's got a bunch of these performance bonuses because he was beating guys like JP Bays and Victor Rodriguez. So the win over Park was a solid win. I'm not going to try and take that away from him. He's going to be willing to strike it out with Charles Johnson, and that's not always a winning strategy. Let me make sure I'm remembering this guy right. Yeah, I'm remembering him right. I might just go. Charles Johnson has bitten me in the butt so many times when I picked him, though. I never like doing it because I like how much confidence can you have in it? I'm going to again here, and I'm going to learn my lesson at some point. But let me asterisk this. I reserve the right to change my mind on Charles Johnson picks based on, this is going to sound really, really stupid, but based on, call it vibes, the ability of the brain to correlate data without necessarily having an articulation mechanism for it. So I got to see those two next to each other a few times too, because Johnson's a lanky guy for the weight class and Silva isn't. Middleweights next, Brad Tavares and Eric Anders, two guys who've just been around for a while at this point. I'm shocked Brad Tavares is still there. I mean, for crying out loud, again, I respect the guy. He's got a good career in the UFC, but his UFC debut was in 2010. June of 2010. He's almost at 16 years in the UFC. That's nothing to sneeze at, but he's on a bad stretch recently. He's 2-5 in his last 7. He lost to Dricus du Plessis, okay, champion. Bruno Silva, definitely not a champion. Beat Chris Weidman, who shouldn't have been in the cage. Lost to Gregory Rodriguez. Lost to the Iron Turtle, Jun Young Park, because I love the Iron Turtle. Beat Gerald. His last 2 wins are Chris Weidman in 23 and Gerald Mearshart last year. And he got knocked out by Robert Brychek his last time out. I think he might be done. But then there's Eric Anders, who is also almost 40 and He's coming off a loss to Christian Leroy Duncan. He beat Chris Weidman before that in 24. And these guys just represent like the same level of fighter with the same level of accomplishment. And I don't know how to feel about that. At this point in time, I think Anders' offense is a little bit too predictable. It's not bad offense, but he's southpaw and he kind of only has the one entry and the one attack. Brad Tavares isn't going to gas out. He's got an okay. Brad Tavares is a pretty good kicking game. That's trouble. Yeah, all right. I'll go with Brad Tavares, but I don't want to pick either of those guys. Oh, we actually have a good fight next. Potentially a good fight. Chris Curtis and Muktabek Oralbai. I like this fight. Curtis has looked. He returned to welterweight last year and beat Max Griffin. It was after a kind of a rough stretch at middleweight. He lost a split decision to Brendan Allen that he should have won. He got a few of those split decisions that should have gone his way. Then the Roman Kopylov loss, I mean, he got TKO'd there, so. But in his welterweight return, that fight with Max Griffin wasn't really shouldn't have been a split. He's fighting Oralbai, who's done a lot between welterweight and recently moved to welterweight. He used to be a lightweight. Oralbai, despite looking like the first history man, is only 28 years old. Good grief. Oralbai returned to welterweight in November of last year and stopped Jack Hermanson, who was moving to welterweight for the first time in a while. It's a good fight. Oralbai is going to be action-oriented enough to make Chris Curtis work. I think that opens up a lot of Chris Curtis's game. I'm looking forward to this one, actually, which means it's going to suck because I can't have nice things. The odds are with Oralbai. I don't think I've picked a dog yet. I'm going to go with Curtis. I may feel really, really foolish about that one, but the age is a big deal. I mean, there's a decade age gap between them. That's a very real thing. But something about the way they match up, man, it just makes me think that Chris Curtis's game is going to be kind of brought to life by how Oralbai fights. And when Chris Curtis's game actually operates as intended, it's really cool to watch, and he's really good at it. So I'll go with the underdog there. I'll go with Curtis. Lightweight next, Balaji Oki and Manuel Souza. Let's have a look at you two gentlemen. Oki, been a little bit up and down. 10-3, 2-2 in the UFC. Beat Timmy Kwamba, lost to Chris Duncan. Beat Michael Aswell, lost to Mason Jones. That was September of last year. How about Souza? He is 13-1, Brazilian. This is his UFC debut, right? Yes, indeedy. Coming off a Contender Series win. What's he lost? He lost to Archie Colgan and Bellator in 24. That's his only loss. He's pretty good. That's okay. I'm not looking forward to it, but I don't think that's a badly matched fight. The odds like Souza, they're bailing on Oki at this point. And you understand that. I'm going to respect the odds. I don't know that I don't know enough about Souza to feel comfortable bucking odds that are that wide. Speaking of Souzas, we have another one at bantamweight. Luan Lacerda will fight Hecher. Hecher? Hecher. He's out of Spain. I'm not sure how that is supposed to be pronounced, so I apologize. Lacerda, 13-3. He's 1-2 in the UFC. Yeah, coming off a win. He armbarred Simon Oliveira, but he lost to Cody Stamen and Damon Blackshear. That's pretty damning. Sosa, 14-1. This is his second fight in the UFC? First fight. He won in the Contender Series. Pretty long winning streak. Jeez, how long is that thing? 11? Yeah, I stopped picking Lacerda a little bit, like 2 fights ago. So we will go with Souza. He's 5'8" at bantamweight. That's tall for that weight class, man. Next up, women's bantamweight, one of the only bright spots in the weight class. Beatriz Mesquita, undefeated, 6-0, good UFC debut, fighting Montserrat Rendon, 7-1. Rendon is what, 1-2 in the UFC, 2-1, 2-1. She had a split decision win over Tamaris Vidal, lost to Daria Zlezniakova, and then had a split decision win over Alice Pereira. If you're getting out grappled by Daria Zlezniakova, and she was, Bia Mesquita will do bad things to you. Bia Mesquita is one of the only bright spots in the women's bantamweight division, which is otherwise kind of a wasteland at this point. How big are the odds? How is that not the biggest? Is that the biggest difference? Some places have Kevin Vacheios as a bigger favorite over Josh Emmett than they have Bia over Rendon. That is completely ass backwards to me. Anyway. Bantamweight next, Elijah Smith and Su Young Yu. Good old jiu-jitsu. I got a soft spot for that guy. He's probably losing this fight, though. This is bantamweight. Smith is coming off of that powerbomb knockout. He powerbombed Toshiomi Kazama. It was a nice knockout. We might see something similar here because Yu is a grappler, good control, pretty good passing. He's 16-3, 2 no contest, 5-fight winning streak. 3-0 in the UFC. Yeah. I'm rooting for you, but I got to go with Smith. I will happily be wrong about that one. He said I got a soft spot for Su Young Yu. And kicking everything off, we have Piero Rodriguez and Sam Hughes. 11-2 versus 11-6. Sam Hughes does seem to have kind of finally figured some stuff out recently. Odds are slightly with Rodriguez. Why is that? She's 4-2, 2-fight winning streak. Last 2 over Josephine Knudsen and a split decision over Ketlin Souza. And there's Sam Hughes, who is, come on, wake up. I know Sam Hughes is the worst record overall. She's 6-5 in the UFC, but she's on a 3-fight winning streak, 2 split decisions, and a win over Shauna Bannon. Maybe if you overrated Shauna Bannon, you got to Sam Hughes is better than you think. Better than I think, maybe. Yeah. For the sake of picking another underdog, Sam Hughes the dog. Yeah, for the sake of picking another dog, let me go with Sam. This one's close enough. I'm not going to feel too bad. Let me throw a brief asterisk on that one. I may just, with the caveat that, like, I'm largely going to determine how I go with that one based on, like, if I wake up tomorrow and go, you sleep-deprived fool, what were you doing? Which has happened to me more than once. All right. And that's the card. So Saturday, MMA Zone of 411mania.com. I will be covering it, so stop on by, say hello, all that good stuff. Save that. That's always appreciated. Okay. So let's move on to news. And let me just kill a couple of seconds here so this is accurate. All right, so the UFC announced on the broadcast for UFC 326, UFC Freedom 250. That's the White House card. So we have that card now. And the reaction to it was there were certain people being very happy with it. There were some people defending it in general. There was a fight that fell out of it during the weigh-ins. Like you can actually see the moment when Hunter Campbell goes over to talk with the matchmakers. It's like, yeah, we lost a fight. Now, the current reporting is that the fight that fell out was Ilya Topuria versus Islam Makhachev, and that Makhachev, for whatever reason, couldn't make it. That is that sucks. That's that's maybe the best fight you can make in the sport, and unfortunately, we're not getting it. Topuria is still on the card. So here's the card. Here's the thing. As it currently stands, we have these 7 fights. That's probably all we're going to get. Guys, this event is not open to the public. It's going to be on the White House lawn, which I think is kind of cool. Don't get me wrong. But it's not, you can't buy tickets to get there. You have to get clear. There's going to be a bunch of government officials there, whether that's people in the Trump administration, whether that's other people from the Senate or the House, or there's government people that are going to be there. Government officials are not going to sit there for 7 hours watching Contender Series debutantes. That's just not going to happen. This is kind of what we're going to get. So, main event for the lightweight title, Ilya Topuria defends against interim champion Justin Gaethje. I was never going to be happy with this fight because I don't think Justin Gaethje is the appropriate number 1 contender. He is, however, the interim champion, and that makes him the mandatory. So this is a mandatory title defense basically for Ilya Topuria. If they couldn't make him and Makhachev up at 170, which is what they were trying to do, allegedly. So I don't like Gaethje's chances, but that fight's not going to suck if nothing else. Co-main event for the interim heavyweight title, Alex Pereira and Ciryl Gane. This is Ciryl Gane's 5th shot at a UFC title. I hate that that's the state of this division. He fought Derek Lewis for an interim belt and won. He failed to unify with Francis Ngannou on one leg. He failed to win the vacant title in fighting John Jones. In fact, turned in one of the worst championship challenging performances you'll ever see. He failed to win the belt from Tom Aspinall and may have eye-poked him out of the sport. And coming off of that, he's now fighting for the interim belt against Alex Pereira. This dude has inserted himself into every fight we actually wanted. We wanted Jones and Ngannou. We got Gane and Ngannou, and we got Gane and Jones. We wanted Jones and Aspinall. We got Gane and Jones and Gane and Aspinall. We wanted Jones and Pereira. Or Pereira and Aspinall, maybe. We got Gane and Pereira. This dude is the definition of we have that at home. Who's asking for this? Oh, golly. Nobody's asking for this. Nobody wants to see. Who wants to see Ciryl Gane in another title fight at this point? Good grief. But he is an imminently winnable fight for Alex Pereira. Because Gane has a good jab. And he moves well. And he's got pretty good cardio for heavyweight. Not great, but for heavyweight, good. He moves a lot. He's got a good jab. He'll sit for an ankle lock from full guard. When he's on top of you in full guard. Like, he's that dude. If you were to ask, like, who at the top of heavyweight right now is the combination of at the top of heavyweight and winnable fight for Alex Pereira, it's Ciryl Gane. They're kind of trying to prop up Pereira here, which is wild to me. The dude doesn't need to be propped up. but you're kind of going out of your way to give him a guy who's 1-3 in UFC title fights, interim or 0-2 in undisputed, 0-2 with a no contest in undisputed title fights, and is 1-2 with one no contest in title fights overall. And this is the dude that we're back here with. Oh, yeah. I'm just being honest, guys. I don't care about this fight. The interim title to me is entirely appropriate. We don't know about the future for Tom Aspinall right now. So in that instance, if you want to make an interim belt, the fact that interim belts have been so comically overused by the UFC is what degrades their value. This is a circumstance where it's appropriate to use one. And we're all laughing at it because even though it's appropriate, we're just used to laughing at it. This was supposed to be Pereira and John Jones. Every bit of reporting that's come about this, Dana White denies this, mind you, but Dana White's word is mud. That dude could tell me the sky's blue, and I'd have to go double check. Like his word means nothing. But every bit of reporting is they were talking with John Jones, and John wanted a number for this. Reports are that it was $15 million, because that's what Zuffa Boxing is giving Conor Benn. And John Jones is a significantly better fighter and a significantly bigger draw than Conor Benn. Conor Benn, of course, boxing, but still. And I don't think that's an unreasonable point. They tried to give John, I think it was what, 20, 30 million to fight Aspinall, and John dipped. So I'm not crying for John Jones here. But I don't think a $15 million ask from him is somehow outside of the realm of reasonability. But they didn't want to go that way because the UFC doesn't want to do that. And dude, Pereira's going to win. We're going to say he's a 3-division champion and all he's got is an interim belt. And as soon as Tom Aspinall and the UFC get a little bit more sideways than they are right now, they're going to promote him to full champion. And then we can all go, behold, Poatan, 3-division champion. And the fact that I'm being that glib and sarcastic about a genuine historic achievement, middleweight champion, 2-time light heavyweight champion, heavyweight champion, that is absurd if it happens. And I'm stuck being cynical about this because of everything else around it, and I'm not happy about that. The rest of this card actually tends to just get worse. Sean O'Malley versus Ayman Zahabi. Good grief. The UFC is just bound and determined to make Sean O'Malley a thing. Like, this should have been Sean O'Malley and Corey Sandhagen. That's a better fight. Look, Ayman Zahabi deserves a top contender. I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm saying they're trying to make Sean O'Malley a thing to get him a high-profile win. And even though no one knows who Ayman Zahabi is or that he's on a winning streak, unless you're in the weeds on all this stuff, if he gets a win at the White House, and he's already got a win over Petr Yan, he shouldn't have had that win, mind you, but he does technically have it. They're going to force him back into the title picture. And this dude is just the worst iteration of he's being treated the same way that post-Shield Roman Reigns was treated if you're a wrestling guy. And nobody wants that. It is, ugh. That should have been a better fight than we're going to get. Then there's Mauricio Hoofy and Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler, desperate to try and fight Conor McGregor, he's getting Timu Conor McGregor. Look, Chandler's going to he's going to do his thing. I half hope he wins, but he's about done anyway. Middleweight, Bo Nickel and Kyle Dawkins. Okay. That's a fine fight. If it were the main event for a preliminary portion of a card, I'd be okay. Or, somewhere in the middle of I'm okay with this. And Diego Lopez versus Steve Garcia, which is that's going to be in all probability, that's going to be a fun action fight, but most people don't know who Steve Garcia is. It's kind of a shame. He's a good fighter, and he's a fairly exciting fighter on a consistent basis, but he hasn't really like broken through. And the UFC just likes Diego Lopez, I guess, so he's fighting here. And again, there's a bunch of people who have kind of been like, you know what? I like the 2 title fights. O'Malley and Zahabi is a number 1 contenders fight, basically. And Lopez and Garcia is pretty much guaranteed fireworks. It is. And okay, the other 2 fights are just fun kind of fights. What are you all complaining about? What's the big deal? Well, let me tell you. 1, I don't think this is a bad card. Sorry, it's over here on my second monitor, so I'm pointing at it. I don't think that's a bad card. For a 7-fight stretch, that is not a bad card. That is a pretty solid 7 out of 10. Right around there. It's a little better than average, not exactly really good. And the fact of the matter is, though, Dana White last year was saying, we're going to put together the best event we've ever done. Guys, Topuria Gaethje, Pereira Gane, O'Malley Zahabi, Hoofy Chandler, Nickel Dawkins, and Lopez Garcia is not anywhere close to the best event the UFC has ever put on. It's not close to the best event they've had in the last 12 months on paper. It's fine. Again, this is better than the average UFC numbered event at this point. That's all I can say. The UFC hasn't had like a genuinely really good pay-per-view / numbered event since like you could argue December. Like the entire first quarter of 2026, we had 1 real title fight. It was a rematch no one wanted between Volk and Lopez. Everything else has been on ice. We're kind of being told now we're not getting this event, if it was going to be what the UFC was vociferously preaching it was going to be, this would have the best fights the UFC could make on it. Not one of those fights is the best fight, is among the best fights the UFC could make right now. I will say, as far as Lopez and Garcia, that's one of the better undercard fights you could make. Like if I throw enough qualifiers on there, that fight I can get to maybe qualifying. Topuria Gaethje is not the best lightweight fight you could make. It is not the best fight for Topuria you could make. That's still Topuria Makhachev. It is not the best lightweight title fight you could make. That's Topuria and Arman Tsarukyan. It's the fight we got, but it's not the best. It's not the best one that could be made. Pereira and Gane is not the best heavyweight title fight, the best interim heavyweight title fight they could make. That would involve bringing Francis Ngannou back. More on him in a minute. There's a lot of things that would involve. It ain't this. It's an okay fight. It's Pereira going for history, and people love Poatan, and I'm certainly not here trying to like bury the guy. But the best? Sean O'Malley and Ayman Zahabi, the best bantamweight non-title fight you could make right now? Hell no! O'Malley and Sandhagen is by every metric a better fight than O'Malley and Zahabi. We're not getting it. Why? Sandhagen wanted it. Either the UFC didn't want it or O'Malley didn't want it. The best? Hell no. Chandler and Hoofy. Look, that'll probably be mostly fun. The best Michael Chandler fight we could make right now? The best use of Mauricio Hoofy? Nickel and Dawkins. That's a fine middle of the pack middleweight fight. It'll ask some questions of Nickel that I want asked, and Dawkins, since coming back to the UFC, has looked okay. Like, I'm fine with that fight. I really am. The best middleweight fight we could put on the on this card? No. But, you know, like I think Trump likes Bo Nickel as a fighter. And again, I'm not objecting to it as a fight. But the best? If this is the best the UFC can do in 2026, God help us. I mean that, man, because this, again, if the best the UFC can ever do these days is somewhere between like a 6.5 and a 7 out of 10, we're in trouble. Like the reaction to the fallout from UFC 326 and the announcement of this has been poor. You've got a couple of people carrying water for the UFC. You got a couple of people with more measured takes. I don't think Ariel Helwani said he thought this was like a 9 out of 10. And then caveated that because I don't think he's carrying water for them. He said, I'm trying to look at like what is using a sliding scale of what the UFC looks like nowadays. Is this a 9 out of 10 on the UFC scale for the last, 18 months? I think there's an argument to be made that it is. And God, that's depressing. But I think that, yeah, again, he's got a point there. It depresses the heck out of me that he does. But viewed from that lens, I might still be lower than 9, but you can make the argument. The two big misses for this card, no Kayla Harrison and no John Jones. And look, I get it. Kayla's not healthy enough to do it. I think. That's my assumption. Because Harrison Nunes should be here. Kayla Harrison is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist for the United States in judo. She's, I think, the only American champion at this point. And Amanda Nunes, one, a little bit pro-Trump, two, became a citizen. She immigrated. She's a citizen of the United States. I think she might hold dual citizenship. I'd have to double check. Like, that fight should be here. But if, dude, Kayla Harrison just had serious neck surgery. Like, if she can't be here, she can't be here. And her health is more important than fighting, clearly. But missing John Jones because, I mean, look, I get the point that that John is a little bit unreliable. I can't fully disagree with that. Like, John did a chunk of that to himself, don't get me wrong. But John's the best American fighter in the history of the sport. He's also like maybe the best fighter in the history of the sport, period. And for whatever reason, mostly money related and a little bit relational damage, like you just know. Instead, Pereira gone. Like, bleh. So my rating, this is somewhere between 6.5 and 7 out of 10. It's not bad. It is not bad. Bad is 5 or lower. Specifically lower than 5, but 5 and lower, I think, is where we get to like bad cards. This is not a bad card. On a pass fail for a 7-fight stretch, it's a pass. But I don't grade pass fail. And I'm not going to pretend that the UFC didn't spend the last year-ish hyping this thing up to give us Sean O'Malley versus Amin Zahabi. Like, no, we ain't doing revisionism on this. So John Jones, the UFC also said, like, as far as we're concerned, John's retired. We'll make him a free agent then. Actually release him from his contract. You won't, because then he could go somewhere else. Conor McGregor is a little bit annoyed, but I'm happy if John never fights again in a lot of respects. I'm very happy if Conor never fights again. But now Conor's like, yeah, maybe I'll be in a BMF fight. Like, no, just go away. Just go away. Man. But, he's not going to be on this card, so I don't know. So, but that's the card. And look, one of the reasons I'm trying to say I may be a little bit down on this right now because I'm doing a compare to what it maybe could have been and what the UFC said it was going to be. It is neither of those things. When we get closer to it, I will probably be a little bit more complimentary in tone, but I'm not going to move. This is never going to be an 8 to me. On paper, this is not going to reach 8 out of 10. It's a 7.5 at best. So my thought right now, again, 7 out of 10. It's okay. It's just really, really, really not what the UFC was trying to hype it up to be at all. And yeah. So again, the fallout there is largely John Jones related, where he's unhappy. What else is new? Yeah. So, but that card being what it is and coming during UFC 263, which wound up being a disappointing night of fights. The MMA fandom right now is just at a low point. And I am not alone in saying that one. A lot of people are saying it. Just, dude, check MMA, the MMA spaces on, X. People were killing the Oliveira Holloway fight in real time. I did my whole thing at the beginning about like, why are they reacting that badly? Well, because you kind of implicitly sold them marketed this as something that it wasn't going to be. And if you'd been honest in marketing, no one would be reacting the way that they are to it. It's not super complicated. You'd still get people saying, man, that fight was kind of boring. Sure. For 25 minutes of that fight, yeah, it wasn't super exciting. But sometimes fights go that way, and we all know that. But when marketing, I'm not going to rehash that point. But then under delivering on paper with this card, while you're in the middle of an event that is wildly under delivering during a 3-month stretch where almost nothing has really delivered. I mean, we've had like, what's been really good about the first quarter of 2026 for the UFC? Like actual fights wise. I'm at a real loss here, guys. That doesn't mean everything's been bad. Like Gagey and Patty was fun. Tarin and Karaskaita was, for what it was fun. Jean Silva and Arnold Allen, that was pretty good. But like, what are we like pumped about? What are we really excited about? Like, nothing. What on this is like, there's people who might get excited for this down the stretch as we get closer, sure. But like, maybe I'm just also a little bit too jaded personally to see it. So I don't know. But yeah, so they've announced that, and there's some people a little bit unhappy about it. To say nothing of all the people that were a little bit man. Okay, this dovetails into my next point, so let me just start this one. So the big news last week was that UFC heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall signed with Eddie Hearn's talent agency. So Eddie Hearn is going to be representing him. I thought I said when they announced that Conor Benn had signed for $15 million for one fight to basically leave Eddie Hearn, is how that kind of boils out. I said that, yeah, the fighters are not going to do anything because they've never done anything in the past when presented with the actual evidence and data around what's going on with them. Turns out, for whatever reason, this one might have shaken a few things. Guys like Aljamain Sterling, Sean O'Malley, Israel Adesanya, they started saying a few things. Like, if Conor Benn can get $15 million for one fight, I think I said, like, I don't think anyone has ever made $15 million for one fight in UFC history. The closest you might get is Brock or Connor when it's all said and done. So like maybe Connor for the fight with Khabib. When it was all said and done, gross, not net, was maybe in that general vicinity. But I doubt it. I kind of doubt that he might have got closer. He'd probably be closer to 10 than 15 and probably under that, but you know. So for whatever reason, a bunch of guys started, speaking. And now Tom Aspinall, after being a little bit sideways with the UFC publicly, is signed with Eddie Hearn. So Eddie Hearn's going to be his, again, manager. Now, this is a little bit of a response to Conor Benn leaving Eddie Hearn to do the one fight with Zuffa. Here's the thing about Eddie Hearn. He's been, and I mean this as a compliment, Eddie Hearn has been poking around how discontented fighters are in MMA for a little bit of time now. Pretty much ever since Zuffa boxing turned out to be a thing and Turkey was involved and all that. Eddie Hearn started like, hey, how you guys doing over there? And fighter discontentment is, I'm not going to say at an all-time high right now. I'm going to say that there's a lot more generalized grumbling and sort of unease. Again, I don't have reporting. I'm not talking with people here. This is, I hate to phrase it this way, but this is an atmosphere thing. This is a vibe. How does it feel? Who seems right now super happy with the UFC? If you're name 4 fighters right now that feel like they are super happy with the UFC. Because I'm struggling there, guy. There's a bunch that are probably generally positive, but who's really? When was the last time you saw a fighter advocate for the UFC? I mean, take that for actually. Let me sit with that for half a second, because it used to be guys like Tito Ortiz, Randy Couture, John Jones, GSP. These are guys that, for a number of reasons and a number of ways, would go to bat for the UFC. That doesn't mean there were never, negotiations with them, but they kind of always were moderately happy, had the promotions back. Who right now feels like they're really happy with the UFC and how they're doing business? I mean, you had Dana earlier today after the Zuffa boxing card be he got asked what's going on with fighters after the Conor Benn thing, because fighters have been making noise a little bit about it. And he said, guys, fighter pay is going to be fine in the UFC. We're making $1 billion a year. Trust me, it's going to be great. Once again, allow me to express how little value Dana White's word has. If he told me that the sky was blue, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, I would need 3 independent sources verifying his information. His word means nothing. It is actually harmful to any point he tries to make that he says it. He was in federal court not that long ago testifying under oath about how little he has to do with the operations of the UFC, yet in every single instance this last week, the lead up to this event, the announcement of the White House card, and the post-fight fallout, he's looked pretty damn involved to me. He could be recalled to the stand, questioned about this, and then charged with perjury. The dude is a liar. It is his job to lie to you about everything. And non-trivial chance he lied under oath, as everyone involved is rushing to destroy evidence that's being alleged. So we're just gonna have to keep an eye on that whole situation. But Eddie Hearn has been poking around like fighter discontent for a little bit now. Not a lot, but he's been around fighters, and the fighter mentality between MMA and boxing is not that different. Like the skill set's wildly different. But like the kind of person, the mental and emotional makeup of fighters is not that different sport to sport. So when he started talking about, I talked with Tom Aspinall once he signed with me and went through his purses, and I went, like, this is pathetic. You should have been making a lot more a while ago. Like you're in front of a stadium of 20,000 people winning main events, and I've paid guys more to fight in front of 1,600 people than what you got paid. He's making that pitch is not just to Tom Aspinall. That's chum in the water around that the fighters are starting to pay attention to. Like I said, I was less jaded at this point, but I remember when Dana White kind of tried to resurrect Zuffa boxing. This is years ago. This is actually like before Saudi Arabia got involved. And I said, they're probably not really going to do this because they'd have to actually compete for contracts and they'd have to pay boxing numbers. And if you're Zuffa Boxing and Zuffa owns the UFC and you're paying, $40 million for a boxing fight, well, you're trying to if you're trying to bid on like Canelo's not getting out of bed for $15 million. I'd like to be there personally. You get me to do a lot for $15 million. But Canelo ain't going to box for $15 million. He's going to laugh at you. And then all the fighters are going to look at what Zuffa Boxing is paying boxers and go, we're the same company. What the hell? That was my thought when I was more jaded, when I was less jaded. Now that I'm more jaded, I thought they're not going to do anything because they've never done anything. Turns out something about the current moment past me was more right than he knew. And so Eddie's chumming those waters with this. And Eddie knows how to talk to fighters. He knows how to say things that get their attention and get them thinking. And that's something a lot of people have been trying to, advocate and mess around in this space have maybe struggled with. So we'll see if more fighters maybe sign with him. We'll see if we'll see what, if anything, comes of this. But yeah, Tom Aspinall now represented by Eddie Hearn, as Eddie Hearn and Dana White are in kind of a public pissing contest. So while the UFC continues to lobby for federal legislation to change and then lie about what they're actually advocating for. Oh, we're not going to change one word of the Ali Act. Then what are we doing here? We don't need it changed. Really? Then why? Then what's the purpose of this? We're trying to revive American boxing. Yeah? How? By being able to set up a promotion that gets to ignore everything the Ali Act does. Yeah, good job, guys. The American MMA market in America and the talent base in America is worse than it's been under your stewardship, and you're the guys who are going to save boxing. Yeah, go piss up a rope. Yeah. All right. And lastly, this is a smaller news item. Weird that this is a smaller news item, all things considered, but here we are. The PFL and Francis Ngannou have parted ways. Francis Ngannou, the lineal heavyweight champion of MMA. That belt, whether you start it with the UFC or you start it with Pancrase, either way it goes to him. And he's got it. My hunch is he's going to fight on the undercard or as the co-main event of the Gina Carano Ronda Rousey card. Now, if Dana White were Vince McMahon, Ngannou would be on his way back to the UFC. Because Vince, for all the very, very, very bad things about that man, and there's a lot of them, with very, very failingly few exceptions, Vince would always do business if there was business to be done and money to be made. Eric Bischoff, Paul Heyman, Brock left under really bad circumstances the first time. Go down the list. You can absolutely go down the list of people who left WWE or the WWF at the time, depending on how far back we want to go. Left under bad circumstances, and 2 years later, 3 years later, welcome back. Let's make money. Because that was Vince. He got his pettiness out in other ways, but he would almost never allow pettiness to influence and impact his bottom line. And for everything despicable about him, I do think that's a little bit that needs to be acknowledged. If as an individualized trait is fairly commendable. Dana doesn't have that. So Francis will not be coming back to the UFC because Dana White is allergic to anything that makes money. Well, he's allergic to anything that's fun that the fans might like. Never mind how much the division desperately needs him. So expect Ngannou to fight somebody on that Netflix card that's headlined by Rousey and Carano, would be my hunch. All right. I think that's everything I had written down here. So let me check the old social medias. And if not, we've been going for almost 2 hours. So we will do plugs and get out of here if we've reached the end of this. Quick scroll through the old X machine. Oh, yeah. The fake numbers. Sorry. That's a thing that I just have to. I don't think. I'm not even going to dignify that one. Sorry, this is just me scrolling. Yeah, there's a lot of people repeating the Dana White soundbite about, guys, we just got this big television deal. Fighter pay is going to be fine. Trust us, bro. No. Absolutely not. I think we're going to... yeah, I'm pretty sure there's nothing new here. All right. So last chance for anyone who happens to be here live. Any questions, comments, or otherwise you want me to address? Speak now or forever hold your peace. And I'm going into plugs. So as for my plugs, Monday on Damn You Hollywood, my movie review podcast, over on the W2M network, we will be reviewing Hoppers, Pixar's latest film, which seems to be a little bit at least of a return to form for them. At least getting them out of the really bad stuff they produced the last couple of years. I haven't seen it yet. I'll be seeing it tomorrow, but that'll be me, Mark. We have Alexis on that one. I think we do. I know we were trying to get Zach on it, but yeah. Right. Zach's on vacation. Yeah, that's going to be me, Mark. That's going to be me, Mark, and Alexis. We'll have a good time. I also have a triple feature on Thursday that I will be part of. That'll be myself and Mark. We will be talking a little bit the career of Roland Emmerich. The 3 movies we're primarily going to talk about are The Day After, The Patriot, and 2012. We've talked a lot of his other movies in different formats. So I want to talk about a lot of stuff related to him. But as far as like the actual movies that we're going to review, it's going to be those 3 primarily. And then my usual spate of coverage. So WWE SmackDown on Friday, per usual. And then UFC Fight Night 269 on Saturday. We will be back here next Sunday/Monday, depending on how things work out. I promise, guys, I'm gonna try and get this. You know what? Maybe I'll just keep it here, and we'll just, I'll cultivate a fan base with the Aussies. We will be previewing. Yes, indeed. We will be previewing the UFC's return to London. UFC Fight Night 270, headlined by Movsar Evloev and Lerone Murphy. That's a good fight. What else is there? Grelly and Michael Aswell. Page and Sam Patterson. Weird. Ivo Baraneski and Austin Lane. That's not interesting because Austin Lane is uninteresting. Roman Dolidze and Christian Leroy Duncan. Man, there's a lot of. Okay, Nathaniel Wood and Lucena Keita is okay. Mason Jones is okay. Jones is usually fun. Wow, okay, apart from the main event, this is just a Cage Warriors card. Good grief. Wow. Like, I like that main event. I really do. Lloyd and Murphy's going to be a good fight. But the rest of that card, man, like, wow. Antonio Trocoli's fighting, and he's probably going to lose to a Lithuanian. I can just guessing because of the last name, named Montas Kondrativius. Kondrativicius. I'm guessing there. I'll figure it out. I'll do a better job next time, I promise. Shamrock's fighting Abdul Karim Al Salwadi. Good grief. This is a regional level card capped off by two genuinely top of the heap fighters. You could tell me this was a Bellator card apart from that main event, and I would have no problem believing you. Really good main event, but man, there is nothing else there. All right. Well, full preview of the nothing next week. Great job selling your next show, Robert. You boob. All right. That's it for me, everybody, as far as the week goes. So thank you all very, very much for tuning in, live or after the fact. Interact with us again. Throw a like this way. Throw a comment down there. I try to interact with them when I can. And I'll see you all next week. So until then, stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.